You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 484, our coverage of The Bad Batch Season 2, in an episode called The Crossing, which was probably one of the more deeper character pieces that we've had. And I'm not going to say in all of Star Wars, but certainly when it comes to animation, we don't get a lot of these moments that we got here. And it's something that I've been looking forward to wanting to see more of in The Bad Batch specifically, but more on that in a little bit. And speaking of great characters, Jonesy's with us tonight. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you this Thursday?
Running like a madman. I had some wiring problems. The Falcon's up and running, though. We got everything fixed. It's going good. But
all I could think about was like, you're going to tear this apart now? I'm trying to get us out of here.
Well, and right before we came on, like as the intro was running, I lost power. So I had to run around my desk to go kick power. It came back on, got my headset on, put this mic in front of me, and then boom, it was like right into it. So I'm a little winded. That's why, but you wouldn't know either way.
I'm actually super impressed that you're able to get around the table that fast. That's very impressive.
Well, there's a will, there's a way. So yeah, no, it was, we'll get more into the episode a little bit, but I was kind of longing for something like this, especially with a character like Tech, right, of all the characters, right? Which is, I think, was a very interesting and conscious decision and choice by the writers. But
right, and we finally got, we knew we were going to get something from Omega as well, but they had to throw Tech into the situation with her was actually pretty cool.
Right. But
how about a little bit of news first? So quick congratulations to Jon Favreau, who has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting. If you remember, Jon Favreau's career in acting actually starts back like in 1990, I think. I think he started on Rudy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was his first film. And of course, he's such a staple. He's such a staple in like the Disney era of not only Star Wars, but with Marvel, of course, with Iron Man and just all the things that he's done, all his appearances. And so, huge congratulations to him as well. Well deserved and pretty exciting stuff to see. And celebration news, because again, this is now about a month and a half out. Ewan McGregor, Andy Serkis, and Ian McDiarmid, of course, are all going to be there. So that's pretty exciting. The heavy hitters coming in, if you will, the kind of the big names. Still no Daisy Ridley.
Not yet, but she's coming. That's what I hear.
Yeah, on the Patreon show, I actually did a little sound effect after you mentioned her.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I don't do that very often, but
okay.
I had to do it this time because there was such a long pregnant pause.
Hopefully it was the X-Files theme. If you got that, then I'll love you forever.
Nope. I don't want to.
Okay, well,
I can't give you too many reasons to love me.
It was a good run, buddy. I appreciate it, though. Go ahead.
It was. We try hard, but, sometimes we fall a little short. And then we've got a little bit of other news, mostly in the comic and book front. And share my screen here for those. Oh, by the way, if you are listening to this, we do a live stream. So cantinacast.com/YouTube. But real quick, in honor of Women's History Month, Peach Momoko is doing a bunch of variant covers for Star Wars, and she is really cool. Like, she does a very unique style of art, which is just really great.
I love her art. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she's got one here for Vader that has Sabe on the cover.
Yep.
We have Baraj Sylvain for the Blade, right? Pretty exciting.
I have to get that one.
On the Dr. Afra cover, we got Domino Tag, which is pretty dope.
Yep.
With her metal arm and everything else. We got some other here's for Hidden Empire, Han Solo. All of the major, the issues this month are going to have them. So if you're a huge Peach Momoko fan, you're going to want to pick a lot of these up. And for those listening, I apologize. I'm just kind of scrolling through, but this Jabba's Palace one, actually Jabba's Palace is a comic I'm going to pass on. But now I see this Leia.
You got to get the cover.
I know now I see Leia in this Boosh cover, and I'm like, well, I don't know what she's got in her hand. It's almost like she's levitating something in the Force. So that's pretty cool.
Curious, yeah.
Yeah. So
these are great.
Yeah, they are. So these are all come out, of course, just next month. And in other news, we have a cover for The Edge of Balance Precedent. This is the Daniel Jose Older manga. And so we've got the Wookiee here. I forgot, is it Akka, I believe is his name. And so he's going to, this is a bit younger Wookiee, but he's going to Dalna, of course, because Path of the Open Hand is causing some ruckus. But this is, I believe, I believe this is the formal end of phase 2 of the High Republic. So might be a pretty big book here to go get. And it sounds like it will be canon. It won't be like the kind of like the other Edge of Balance was, I guess, technically canon, right? Or was it
was canon? Yeah,
canon adjacent.
No, it was canon. It was just set so far away, and like it was kind of an isolated story that really didn't. I mean, it felt the impacts of what was going on in Phase 1, but it didn't have an impact to the events of Phase 1. It
didn't have a direct touch point to it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Other than Stellan Geos and a couple other.
Right, but this one definitely does, and there's a Hosh, I believe is what they're called, the little spider looking creature. I believe that's what they're called. So anyway, you can find all this over on StarWars.com. Of course, if you're listening in, you're not seeing what we got on the live stream here, but really cool covers out there. Just wanted to share those with y'all as we kind of got started this morning or this evening, whatever it is.
Yeah, it depends on where you're at. It could be morning, could be evening. You could be having a drink right now. I wish I was having a drink right now.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of drinks.
Okay.
We're celebrating in a toast because we have a new Patreon member. So a huge congratulations to Jeff as well. Jeff Valier joined us about a week ago. Apologize for the lateness on getting this announcement out there. So he joined our After Dark tier. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining the team. We really do appreciate it. And of course, a very special thank you to all of our now part of the tribe members, Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, and Uncle Leon. And of course, our Delusions of Grandeur members, Rod, Kathy, and Hard Counter. Again, thank you all so much. If you are curious about Patreon and all of our cool content that, well, we think is cool, all of our amazing content over on Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon. We'll find all of that you got there. The kind of the two main things you can grab from all that is that for just $1, you get early access to all of our regular streams, so the ones that you're listening to right now. And if you would like access to the special content, the Patreon-only content, as well as some of the live streams that we do for the Patreon, those are starting at only $2. And if you want to join us on the show, take a look at those top tiers as cars roll by my neighborhood here. Sorry about that.
And we just spent a good amount of time last night, as a matter of fact, talking about a lot of possibilities. Well, 4 technically possibilities about who the believer was, who was shown in the most recent, or up until yesterday. Who that was. And so we kind of tossed around some ideas, some theories, and it was kind of fun taking the trip down memory lane and talking about a lot of legends, clone troopers and variations thereof.
Yeah, and that was something we didn't lean into as much as far as like advertising it and whatnot. When I was editing, I was like, man, we didn't really mention that we're gonna really is kind of going to hardcore legends after we kind of got through the intro aspect of it all.
Yeah,
you know, pulling those clones out of the old memory banks there was a lot of fun. And so if you love legends and you love clone legends, especially the different types of clone troopers that were out there at the time, that's a show you might want to go check out.
Rob.
Yep. Well, Rob's already a Patreon member, so he's going to go check it out anyway.
But yeah, no, that was fun. We'll have to get with the marketing team and figure out how to get that fixed for next time.
So, well, I kind of already fixed it because I did the show.
Oh, okay. Good.
But anyway, that's out there already. So if you are a Patreon member, go get it now. And if you're considering it, maybe go start with that one and see if you like it.
Maybe you will. Maybe you won't.
You definitely will.
You do. You will.
Yeah, we don't produce garbage mostly. Usually. Sometimes. Never mind.
Sometimes, though, when the garbage is out, it's hot. It's hot garbage.
That's right. You know, it wasn't hot garbage, though, Albert. I'm just going to keep interrupting you with questions.
Yeah. All right. Let's get the show going here because I got a lot to talk about. Let's start with our opening thoughts and comments around the crossing, because the way this episode starts off feels like it's going to be another, mission of the week, right? Especially when you read the description. However, as soon as I was talking to Jonesy about this last night. I think it was after or before. It was right after we did the Patreon show. We were off air. Right. But I said there was something about this episode that felt different because of the way it started. In fact, I think the first minute and a half, minute and 30 seconds, there's no dialogue, which is probably not, I think that is probably uncommon for the Bad Batch and just Star Wars animation. There's something going on, but it was just the tone, right? The setting, the music, everybody was in silence. We can talk about whether or not they're kind of coming off of feeling the effects of having lost a member, even though they may not be openly talking about it. They could be just, it's on their mind. But it was a very different kind of tone that was set earlier on, and that kind of continued on through the episode, which I thought was really great because it did feel like this. I got a lot of thoughts on this, but then I'll kind of pass it over to you. But this one felt a little different in that I don't know if I'm like 10 years old. Like if this was really the most gripping Star Wars animation I've ever seen. I, as an adult and as a parent, like this one hit a lot of really deep chords with me, which we'll get into a little bit, but I really enjoy this. This was a lot of emotion and thinking and, just what it means for people to go through change, which is something we all face every day of our lives. And just being that for first and foremost, front and center in Star Wars, especially with Omega, I thought was pretty special.
Yeah, and I think it's also how do we deal with change, but also how do others interpret change and how do we meet them on their own terms, right? And step outside of our own comfort zone. I think some of those are really difficult things to really capture and to really talk about sometimes, because unless you're in that situation, you don't have a reason to. And unless you're living it, we all have something. But I really like that we got an insight into the way that Tech, views this. And he is more self-aware than maybe we've given him credit for in some ways. But what I like about you said at the beginning, you said that there wasn't a lot of dialogue. It was very quiet. I like that Omega. What I took from that is Omega really sets the tone for the squad, for the family, right? I mean, her demeanor is what sets the mood for practically everything. And the more I thought about some of the episodes, I'm like, okay, this is actually kind of true. While it's a bit subtle in some ways, as soon as she's down and she's withdrawn from the group, you just feel it immediately. And I think that's what you had. And they displayed it in such a great way. She's lagging behind. She's not motivated. She has all of the outward symptoms of, some sort of depression or, at least just being down in the dumps a little bit. And so I really like that they captured that spirit of all of that, and her demeanor sets the entire tone for the team.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And that, some of that, again, I don't want to read too much into that, but we've been talking about what is Omega's role, what is her special ability, and it's becoming more and more apparent that she's,
it's making the team feel bad about themselves because they're not appealing.
Well, she's like she's like the team spirit, right? She's definitely somebody who is an empath. We see that, I mean, in countless examples of not just with the team members, but other people that they just come in contact with, right? That's kind of what she leads with, that front foot. So yeah, in a lot of ways, if Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? And that's kind of what we were seeing there early in the earlier stages. Maybe not. We'll get into that here in a little bit as well. But give me what other thoughts came to, or did you have, I guess, for this episode?
A couple of things. The music really gripped me right away. It really captured this kind of Southwest vibe. It was almost like this Western feel, but with a bit of like a Spanish overtone to it.
Yeah,
which I just really love because it just captured what I view like the Southwestern United States, like just from a visual aspect, the rocks, the colors, and the music just perfectly. Kevin Conner just grabbed it immediately. It was absolutely perfect. I thought about you because they definitely used a matte painting in this one. The background was
right, yeah.
was the sunset and everything, just the oranges and the reds and the yellows, all of that. It was definitely a matte painting.
Yep.
It was just front and center. It was absolutely gorgeous. Anyway,
we got to get to the bottom of that though, because now that's 3 instances where I'm like, that is a matte painting. You can't convince me it's not. And I just love that idea that they're doing that with, Star Wars 3D animation when they don't have to, right? That's the cool thing about it.
Yeah, but it still just blends in so perfectly as background.
Yeah, sure.
And of course we got Hondo Ohnaka. That was really exciting as well.
Stop it. Do not. Like, of all the things, like, was it Wednesday? We hadn't even talked about the show, but you were already texting me about this because I saw that and I go, oh my God, this is like fodder for Jonesy. He's going to be all over this. And here it comes. I started getting messages about Hondo Ohnaka. I'm like, that's not him, dude.
It's not Hondo. I know that. But
it does.
But you definitely get the so it looks a lot though, right? Like the outfit and the pirate vibe. And in Discord, we were talking a little bit about this too, that it just gives off that vibe. I mean, you had the face covered, you got the feathers for the hair kind of dropping down, the helmet.
Yep.
Different but similar.
Different.
He has like more of a shell looking thing, like a tortoise shell kind of helmet. And again, the skin was much paler than Hondo in general, but it was still really cool that you just got those vibes and they're just teasing you with it. And really, how cool would it be? I mean, because what's a pirate without a ship?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Pirate ship, right? Anything else?
Oh, we got lots of things to talk about tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, let me share some, I guess, the rest of my opening thoughts. I mentioned this was probably the most character building episode that we had from the Bad Batch. And again, I don't want to use those words too heavy because I get it. We only had about
They were really brief moments.
Well, they were brief, but it's like we don't get those with the Bad Batch. It's very.
We don't get them with Tech.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the really important one here. Is we don't get them with Tech, and for him to take a moment to actually reflect and be a bit vulnerable in that way.
Yep.
Is really important. I think it was really cool to see that. So I'm with that. Sorry to interrupt you, but
no.
Yeah, with him, it's just so important because we just don't ever have the opportunity to see it because he never gives us the opportunity for the most part.
Yeah.
And he's just
when we talk about like watching the Bad Batch, right? We want the story to move forward. We want the big mythological kind of clones, conspiracy, and all that stuff. But at the same time, there's a lot to be said about just getting a moment to sit down and breathe, live with the characters, get in their heads, kind of understand what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're going through. I think they do a really good job of just showing that through the animation. And we've counted a number of examples where just little, the way they look at each other, right? The animation has come so far, they can do a lot of that storytelling without having them speak or say anything. So I think that's good. But getting to hear them say these things is so important, I think. At least it is for me, because I feel like I've connected with the character of Tech for the first time ever. Like he's so different than my personality. And like some of the stuff that he said in this episode, like pissed me off. Like I just like, and I get why. I mean, that's just who he is, right? But I don't like associating with people like that so much, right? It's really hard for me to have relationships with people that really aren't in touch with their feelings or can't express themselves or just have this, I don't know. I don't want to get too hard down on Tech, but he's very different than me. And it's very alien. And so for the first time, because he finally said that, I felt like Omega were like, okay, I think I get this guy now. There is something there, right? He's not a callus. He's not a robot. He's not a series of equations and numbers. There is a living being in him. And until now, he's never really done much to give me anything more than he's going to give the most logical Spock response to, a question or a situation.
I will say this, though. I was really proud of Hunter as well. And it was really cool to see Hunter be vocal and understand what Omega was like experiencing, at least be able to interpret. Now, I mean, was he doing enough? Maybe not, but he at least understood why she was upset in general, and then how and why Tech, what he said was just so insensitive.
Yeah.
From how she felt.
Yep.
Right. And even though he's being very matter of fact and very pragmatic about it, Hunter understanding what she needs in that moment, given the context of their situation, Hunter's not really able to give a lot of that either, but that he's able to call him out and say, you need to go fix this. Like, you need to go do it, and give Tech that opportunity as well, I think was important too. And I think showed a lot of growth for Hunter from where we've seen him over the last season and a half now.
Yep. So the other quick notes I have, I said this was the humanization of Tech. This was a story I thought was really good, and I went back. So I was a little surprised, and I think yesterday when we were talking about it, I'd only seen it once, and I said, I wonder who wrote this, because it felt very different than a normal Star Wars story, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I don't want to get into the whole discussion about, do writers need to be in tune with Star Wars, or can you bring somebody quote off the streets that's done other stuff and implant them into a Star Wars story and tell a good effective story? That's exactly what happened here. And I don't want to take anything away from Brooke Roberts. Okay. Brooke Roberts is the writer. Of course, it is a story by Matt Miknovitz, and he's been doing a lot of these already.
Right.
But the way what she did is she came in and, almost agnostic of Star Wars, just told us a story about the people. Like, this could have been anywhere. And I know people are very upset about that. Like, oh, this isn't really Star Wars. It could have been it could have been told anywhere else. But that's the beauty of it, right? What are you looking at?
I'm not throwing my hands up thinking like that people can, everything has to be X-Wings and blasters and lightsabers, and we can't just have a good story with the characters that we like and it be set in Star Wars, and we still have a very humanistic moment. It's BS to me. I just don't understand it. You talk about how you get upset about certain things. I get upset about that stuff.
Yeah. And you don't, and again, I don't want to take anything away from like the current Pew Pew writers either. I mean, they're fully capable of telling a story like this, an emotional story, or getting in the heads of the characters. But to have somebody that kind of comes in from the outside and bring that grounded conversation that they have, and even some of the things that you alluded to earlier that we'll get into with Hunter, I just thought she did a really good job. So Brooke Roberts, thank you so much. She was, I went and looked, she's never done anything in Star Wars ever. It looks like her biggest run was she was one of the writers or story contributors for The Flash from like 2014 to 2017.
Yeah, but other than that, when the Flash was good, right?
Well, that's what I was getting from like doing the research. Like everybody seemed to love that portion of it.
Yeah, so early episodes,
yeah. So she did a really good job. So I felt like they did a great job in kind of telling that story. It was coarsely, deftly directed. The music was amazing. Visual effects, once again, like I don't understand why this thing isn't going to land some kind of technical. At least it should be getting some kind of a technical acknowledgement, rewards of some site.
I think the times where they did not use any music, I think it was also just as powerful. And we've talked about this in previous episodes where not having sound and not having music, in certain instances, whether it's an action sequence or whether it's a very intense emotional discussion or just the suspense, I think those are really important to know when to use it and when to back off. Yeah. And so it was a great decision, I think, to just allow Tech and Omega to have the moment and not have anything get in the way.
Yep. Yeah. No, it was good. There was a lot of, even visually, just in that cave and the limited lighting, all of that plays into the mood and sets that tone. And then the last thing we'll kind of kick this off and kind of go right into the full breakdown here. But I have a question for you because I ask this a lot, and sometimes it's more obvious than others. But what was your takeaway on the title? The title says The Crossing. And like, I don't know, like I have a very in your face, really not a lot to think about kind of way to explain what The Crossing is. Then I have kind of the next level, which is a little bit deeper, maybe, and then I've got one that's a complete whack theory, and I'm happy to share all three of them, but I don't know that I walked away with like a solid, oh, yeah, I know exactly what they're talking about here.
No, I mean, there's nothing, it didn't seem like there was any obvious, physical thing, right? They didn't cross something. They didn't try to do this or that. I think if anything, it felt like more of a crossing between Omega and Tech and kind of meeting in the middle and finding common ground about some things and understanding each other a little bit better. Yeah. So crossing that bridge, if you will, or crossing that gap, and maybe more so Tech than Omega, because Omega's just kind of feeling, right? She's just kind of going through the feels, and Tech is having to go out there and actually meet her and really pull himself across rather than anybody else doing it or pushing him or anything else. So yeah, that was more or less how I took the title, because I really couldn't find much anything else that really made sense that I liked, at least.
Okay. Well, I won't give you mine. I'll give you all three of mine here at the end, because that question I have at the end in our final thoughts. So something to think about.
Way to put me on an island up front, and then you'll just come at the end and be like, well, here's all my amazing ideas.
All right. So listen, I'll be fair. I think you're right. I think that's probably where that was my middle one, right? There was a crossing of their personalities or coming to some understanding, right? Mutual understanding of who they are and how they process things and their emotions and feelings and all of that. That seems like a very deep kind of a way to put the title in there, right? The one that was really in your face was that, I guess at one point they did cross from one mind to the other, and I thought, oh, they're crossing. Look, they're crossing through the thing, and then there was a stampede. So that one's really terrible. But I have one that I think is again, I'll say that one for the very end.
All right, you can say the whack theory for the end.
Yeah, because it's actually a whack theory, but it's like, whoa, yeah, maybe you're right, Albert.
Oh,
no, nobody will be saying that.
I was about to say this is going to be epic because no one ever says that.
Overselling it. Okay. This was directed by Nathaniel Villanueva. He's directed a number of these now. It's been the same crew with the exception of the writer, which again, Brooke Roberts did this. By the way, this was brought to my attention by several of our followers last week.
Right.
And I did not get a chance to talk about it last week because I just completely slipped my mind, but they fixed the freaking skip intro button.
Now it hangs around too long.
No, you can't. No, you can't win. You can't make you happy, Jonesy.
They did fix it though. That was nice to see. Did you use it though?
I did. And is it coincidental that I come out on the air finally and say fix the dang button, and the very next episode it's fixed? I don't think so.
We tell everyone that Disney listens to us.
Yeah. So
I mean they don't, but they do.
I got that off my chest.
I'm surprised that we just close up the show now.
Right. We just call it a
25 minutes into it. We talked about it.
We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Okay. So this first part I called "We Bought a Mine." So Sid, she's bought this mine, which I've got all kinds of questions around, but more on that later. And they're there to kind of extract this ipsium, which I'd never heard of before. I guess it's
Yeah,
it's kind of like a
yellow brother or sister to coaxium.
The coaxium, right?
It sounds like coaxium. In its raw state, it's very unstable.
Yeah, raw state, very unstable. We've seen this before, very combustible.
Right.
And there's the storm, and that storm is very symbolic. Like, I don't think they showed the storm, and you could hear the storm, and even the episode ends. Like, when it fades to black, they hang on the rolling thunder for like 2 seconds. Right. And I think all of that is purposeful. I think it was a conscious decision, but the symbolism of a storm coming, like we know there's something going to happen. I mean, we're 9 episodes into the series. We've got 6, 7 left, whatever that is, 8 left, 7. And, well, technically 5, because this is going to be, there's going to be a part 2 to this, right? So we've only got 5 episodes left, and we're waiting for the drama. So I think that they may have been trying to signal that there's something really rolling in here soon.
Yeah, the Bendu.
I hadn't even thought about that. Shame on me. But yeah, it could be Bendu. That'd be kind of cool. But yeah, talk about fan service. So, but I did like that they kept coming back to it, right? And it was very ominous. They would stare off and kind of watch the clouds starting to develop and then go away. And he's talking about how the storms are very volatile. They're kind of coming and going. There's unpredictability here. All of this seems like it is symbolic of what's happening in the series, sometimes with the characters. Again, maybe reading too much into that, but I did enjoy that. Okay, but what we're seeing here, and I don't want to, like, we joke about this a lot, but I think what we're seeing here is this, the proverbial stages of teen development, right? And I don't want to get into a whole, like, TED talk about what that means for anybody that's not aware. But in a nutshell, right, you have teams, they go through different stages and they get to the kind of the highest stage, which is performing, which I think you could argue they were probably there right before Echo left. And it's part of the natural progression for teams, natural development of teams to take a step back, right? To recess in some way, especially when there's a change within the team structure. And that's exactly what we're seeing here, right? We had somebody like Echo, well established. It took a while for him to kind of get in his groove, kind of find his place. And once he was there, they were relying on him for a lot of things. They were operating, they were performing, they were at that highest level. Now he's stepped away, and we're seeing the teams now fall back a couple stages to maybe like a storming stage or forming where they're arguing, they're trying to figure things out, right? They're dealing with emotions. People now have more responsibility than they did before. All of this is all natural things. And although they never really signal that so much directly, they never talk about it, it's very indirect. That's exactly what's happening. You see the brothers, right? Her parents are arguing constantly. You can see Omega looking at them going, what's going on? We never do this, right? They're never arguing. Everything's been working just fine. All of this feeds into this theme about what does it mean or how do you adjust to change? How do you cope with change? What are the coping mechanisms that people have for change? And how does that impact other people? And that's exactly what we saw with Tech. His coping mechanism was like flies in the face of what Omega would do. Like, she's just shocked. She's actually, offended by the fact that he's coping the way he does. So, okay, I'll kind of pause there, but I think there were a lot of instances where we were seeing that, not just between Omega, but we were seeing it amongst Hunter, Wrecker, Tech and Wrecker, obviously, for some of the things that had happened to.
Right. And so what's the one thing you do if you've ever listened to a coach talk about this type of thing, for like leadership training, things like that? Whenever you go back and you have change within the group after you've been in a high performing team, the very first thing you do is you have to acknowledge what's different.
Yeah.
You have to talk about the problem, right? You have to go back to it and put it back there. And this is a group that just doesn't excel at this, right? Because why would they? They've never been trained to do any of this stuff. They don't have any experience with it. Well, they have a lot of experience with change, but it was always within the confines of a mission or of the military, not necessarily of a family. And that's when the comments that Omega, or the question she asked Tech later on, really have such his approach to the problem and his approach to understanding things is what's been finally challenged. And she finally has it out there along with Hunter and Wrecker to an extent. But that's the very first thing you do. You just acknowledge that there's a difference. And that's what Omega's not getting. She feels it. She wants to talk about it. Maybe she's tried to talk about it, but for whatever reason, it is not coming out of this group because they're just going to be like, well, he's gone. We just need to deal with it. We need to change. We just need to adapt. We'll do what we always do. Mm-hmm. But there's no room for feeling any of that. It's the mission, because otherwise, if you feel too much, you die too much, right? That's the mentality they have, is that it's a weakness if you dwell on that type of thing, you just have to adapt, because otherwise you might not survive. Figure out it's a problem to solve, not necessarily it's not necessarily reforming an environment or a team dynamic or anything like that. It's more of just a problem.
Yeah, in some ways it parallels, like, what the Jedi mentality. When, like, how many times have we seen, especially like in the High Republic, like there's Jedi falling over left and right, and so many times they're just like, okay, he's dead. He did what or she did what they needed to do, and we move on. Like, we don't have time to, pay remorse or anything like that. Right. And that's where Bell Zettifar was really struggling, right? He's almost kind of like the Omega in that situation. Not to bring in the High Republic, but he's going through a lot of that emotional stuff when everybody else around him seems to be okay. Like, so what? We lost some of the greatest people we've ever had, but yeah, it sucks. But, they're part of the Force, and we adapt, we change, we move on, we grow from it. Like it's no big deal. And he's still struggling. Like, man, this just seems out of place. This isn't right. Like, how are we not grieving? And I think that's where Omega's at. She's wondering, like, we've lost a team member and we're just moving on. Like, no one wants to, acknowledge the fact that that person's gone. And for them, it's a different perspective. And I get all that, but we'll talk more in just a few minutes here. So back to the story. This is where Hunter and Omega are kind of set to look out, right? They're feeling the effects of, well, they don't have this other person that they can plant with Omega. That was kind of her role. Her and I think we saw it in 2 examples in previous episodes where it was her and Echo that were kind of left behind to be the watch group. And so now he's not there. So it's got to be Wrecker. And so that's putting them at a disadvantage. And then there's also they eventually find that they need Omega. And so they go out there and they kind of bring her in at that point. But I want to get to the poacher, because I know we talked about Hondo and Knock already in joking, but who is this? And here's this plays into my whack theory. Maybe I'll probably just naturally kind of explain it as I move along here, because I have a question about, this is a deserted planet, right? Maybe not. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But at least the area that they're in doesn't look like anybody's been here in a very long time. And suddenly, out of nowhere, you have this one ship in the entire galaxy that happens to land here on this planet to go get Ipsium, which there doesn't seem to be a lot of. And you've got somebody that tracked them and followed them, the Marauder, the Clone Force, right? I have a hard time wrapping my head around, like, how would somebody even know that they were there, but much less track them? So I have this conspiracy theory that this is Sid. That Sid is the one that sent him on this kind of like, go get this. I need this. I bought a mine. Go mine it. They get there and they're like, what the heck? There's nothing even here. They got somebody that knew exactly how to get into the ship, where it was going to. I mean, sure, if they followed them there, but then this person out of nowhere, and he looks kind of young. I mean, maybe he or she looks kind of young. They look young to me. So I just have a hard time thinking that just somebody like this would be able to go in.
If she was behind, so are you suggesting that she arranged this situation to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, they usually leave the door open.
The title,
and it feeds into the title. Okay. So what purpose would that serve? Do you have a
well? We don't know. I think if this comes out, I mean, we didn't find out in this episode, but maybe we find out in episode 2 or the sequel part of it, part 2, or whatever, or later down the road. But I don't know. This one doesn't seem plausible. Like, I'd have a hard time.
Yeah, Jeff is all over this. Oh, it said Trandoshans. I'm telling you, he's got a thing against Trandoshans. Jeff does.
He does have a thing against Trandoshans.
He has a serious prejudice, and now he's self-aware, and he says it. Right. So I mean, I guess that's something.
Thanks for owning it, Jeff.
That's right.
No, so
I hadn't considered that. I mean, I don't know, because again, you could. I mean, there's other ways you could theorize around this. That there is it's an old mining place. They feel like most of it's dried up. This is kind of like it looked like the old West, right after the gold boom busted.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, but there's probably still some people around, and they've got devices that can track ships. And so when they have something in, you send a scout. Hey, it kind of works out. You steal a ship. And again, the stealing of the ship progressed the story and helped give Omega more of a voice too, because it was like that final straw of sorts. Maybe not the final straw, but it was another in a series of losses for her that all of a sudden said, okay, well, now you've taken my home. Not only did you take one of my brothers, my friends, my dad's, and now you took my home. And now it feels like I have nothing all of a sudden. I've gone from having like a great life, and now I've just lost everything. I mean, it's kind of a dramatic swing of sorts.
Right.
So some of it's about maybe a plot device of sorts just to further that and give them a challenge here. But it's interesting. I'm trying to think why Sid would do that or why that scenario would work. And that would be a tough one to figure out. I guess we'd have to wait for retrieval.
Yeah. Well, we can talk more about it later. I just, it seems like it's all too convenient. And it just went too easily. Because I mean, I don't want to. I know Wrecker is one person.
Though. Come on.
What's that?
It is Star Wars, though. Come on.
Yeah. Well, that's true too. And I don't want to put too much blame on Wrecker, although I guess Tech was right. I mean, it was his fault. You know.
I mean, he couldn't see the ship. I mean, when they said to look out for it, I'm like, you can't see it. I mean, I was like, how is he going to look? But again,
it's a bad leadership decision. It's Hunter's
you kind of expect you can see everything though, because I mean, everything's kind of in plain sight. But
sure,
whatever.
Yeah. All right. So this is where they go back and get Omega. They come back inside. The plan is to get her to kind of help get up into the little cracks and nooks and get some of that the Ipsium out of there. And Omega this is kind of that one. This is a scene where she's really feeling bummed about having lost Echo. You know, she's going through the stages of loss and grief, right? As well. We can get into that too if we want. And they all are. But she mentions that it's weird without him around. And like in her head, and I think you were kind of talking about this earlier, but in her head, it's like this guy's passed. Like he's gone, he's dead. And for the other guys, you know, they're more mature and they're soldiers, and so they look at it as what they said. He's just on a different mission, right? He may not be part of the team, but he's still around. Like no one died here, child. And that's where I feel like they have a hard disconnect. Like they really can't connect with her and kind of understand where she's coming from. She's not speaking in black and white terms, whereas they are.
Well, and I think of a couple of different things. If you look at what Omega's experienced so far since we've met her, I mean, her home world has been destroyed of Camino by the very people who employed them.
Mm-hmm.
Crosshair left the team largely while it was largely a disagreement about how to follow orders or what their purpose was.
Yeah.
In Omega's perspective, she's probably a huge component of that too, because Crosshair did not like her and felt threatened by her.
Right.
In whatever capacity. So he left the group, right? And I think that's the important part. And now you have Echo who willingly left and abandoned her.
Right.
To where all these abandonment issues now are starting to creep up of like, why would someone else want to leave now? You know, Crosshair already left, and yeah, there were other things, but Echo willingly left. And she's not quite mature enough and old enough to really understand all of the things that Echo has experienced and gone through of why this was so important for him to leave. And quite honestly, again, they didn't take the time to really help her understand any of that stuff either.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to help her understand where his position was, but also just to hear her out and let her get it out and let her feel that she is supported and that they all feel it too, but they will move forward together rather than we just have to move forward. You know, we just decided we just individually, we get over it and we move on.
Yeah.
So I think those are the things for Omega to keep in mind as you kind of look at what else has gone on of why this would be so extreme. And again, she got really close with Echo, like she has with everybody. But I think it was just another one, and that it really, really hurt because it brought up a lot of those old memories with Crosshair, I think in particular, and maybe even with like Nala Se and Tom Way, all these other ones that have tried. I mean, Tom Way got killed trying to help protect her, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's had a pattern of people coming into her lives and either being killed or, just being taken away or leaving for whatever reason. And for her, it's like, okay, so what is the stability, right? The stability is the core members of the Bad Batch, and Echo was a part of that. And so now you remove that piece, then everything else that's going around them gets exacerbated, right? Yeah. Losing the ship, like you said, losing Echo, the fact that, she's got some trust issues, right? She doesn't feel like Tech even trusts her. She kind of questions that a little bit later. Like, wow, I can't believe you even really trust me or believe in me in that way. So this is all kind of starting to pile up on, and there may be some in here too. I mean, we don't know exactly how old she is, but she may be going through her preteen angst, right? So if you're a parent, you know exactly what we're talking about.
The sass was starting to come out. That was for sure.
I'll tell you what, it happens. And I know, we all go through it, and it's different as a parent, but
her talking really slowly when she was drilling, like, I know. I think I probably did that earlier today.
Right. So yeah, there's probably just some some of that just kind of going on. And then on top of that, she's, like I said, the analogy that I use, that these are her parents, and they're sitting there bickering and arguing, and they're not functioning like a team. And this is all very alien to her, because up until now, I mean, yeah, they've had some pretty bad moments, significant moments, but they've stuck together and they've made it through all of this stuff, kind of to what, Tech was saying. But they persevered as a team. In her eyes, they persevered as a family, and now things are not so great, right? Things are a little bit rocky.
Well, I think, to be fair, the team bickers a lot anyway. They always have. I mean, they're just all very different, and they expect a lot of each other. It's very high expectations, I think, of what each one's supposed to deliver. But everything is just exacerbated now for Omega, like you were saying before. Mm-hmm. Everything is just heightened. Every little thing is just touching that raw nerve. And so while them arguing and calling each other out isn't necessarily anything new from what we've seen, they're usually pretty critical of one another. It's all just so much more raw and heightened for her right now.
I think where the difference is, though, is there was 2 shots where they focused on Omega. Like, we left the argument, which we've never done, and then they put the camera front and center on Omega. It's even a close up, and you can see her eyes going back and forth, and her brow starts to change, like she's worried about what's happening.
Right.
So for her, the impacts are greater than in the past, for all the reasons that we've just talked about.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, if they start arguing, is one of them going to leave again?
Right.
Yeah.
That fear creeps in. Like, okay, who's next?
Yeah, good point.
So so this is where she's extracting the Ipsium, and the reason why she's good at extracting this stuff is because she is a Force sensitive character, and we all know that.
Nice job slipping that in there.
I didn't put it in the show notes because I knew you'd take it out. No, she's not a Force user. She might be Force sensitive still. Not gonna let that go. But yeah, either way. So all joking aside, it was good to see her contributing in a different way. Right? She's not just a lookout, or some of the other roles where she's had. I mean, she's had some combative roles here this season, which was kind of cool. But using her deftness to extract this, and the steady hands. Maybe she becomes a little surgeon later on or something. Who knows? Okay, so this is where Hondo Jr. approaches the Havoc Marauder and steals it. I call this Grand Theft Marauder. Oh, I make myself laugh.
Nicely done.
Yeah, but so yeah, the ship's stolen, and I don't know. I won't get it. I've already kind of blew my thunder on this one, but I just have a hard time understanding how they would have allowed that to happen. Like, the poachers are out there, and it's good to have somebody watch it, but
they closed the door this time, so that's something. They at least closed the door on the ship.
That's true.
They just didn't lock it, or their locks are not very good.
Yeah. So I guess the question, that comes up is, how do we, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but it doesn't get addressed, but I mean, I don't think the Marauder's gone, it's got to come back. It's not like the Razor Crest.
I hope so. I mean, Omega's got her stuffed animal in there.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, yeah. So on that note, I mean, her seeing literally her home fly away, and they're just kind of like, meh. Well, that sucks. Let's get back to work. And then, it gets addressed a little bit later after the cave-in.
And she's like, what the hell?
Right, what's going on? Like, where are your priorities? Who are you people? I don't even know you guys anymore.
Right.
But it's just a ship, right? They'll get another one. There's plenty of them out there. So they'll figure it out at some point. They always do, right? That's where it keeps coming back to.
Right.
Okay. So this is where the storm's coming in. They're arguing over who lost the ship. They head back inside.
Yeah, we got a Lion King
we get more of them kind of bickering back and forth. And then, what's his name? Tech mentions that the closest town was like 40 clicks away, which is kilometers, right? So that's a pretty far
it's a pretty good
distance
hike
away. Yeah. So I have a question later on, though. Like, so they were 40 kilometers away. This might be Star Wars math. And then they fell into this like underground, like river, aqueduct, whatever it was. Did they go like 35 kilometers?
Well, we don't know because of the underground waterway. We don't know how far that swept them away, or maybe that took them a shortcut. Maybe they're going through the mountain. You had to go all the way around it in order to get to the town. So, I mean, yeah, Star Wars did away.
All right. And that's fine. I really don't. This is the stuff I get hung up on, of course. And so they start heading out, and this is where we get the stampede scene. Which I thought I mean, there wasn't a lot of action. This was the only action moment really outside of the aqueduct scene. But I had flashbacks to the Lion King.
Yeah, I mean, Wrecker kind of had a Mufasa moment there.
Right. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I was like, whoa, this looks just like that scene where.
Yeah, well, they've had so many homages this season anyway. It wouldn't surprise me that it just made sense.
Yeah.
And you're right. It did give a little bit of action to an otherwise pretty methodical episode.
So make it at one point here too, like I think it's as they're traversing or heading back, they're trying to head to the other town or the civilization or whatever it is, and she's sitting there kind of trying to call Omega or or Echo, sorry,
right,
and she's really upset he's not answering, and like again, it's almost denial, right? That stage of grieving where she's like she can't accept that he's gone, and so she's going to do what she would normally do, which is reach out to him, because why wouldn't he answer? And once he answers, he's going to come and save us, because why wouldn't he come and save us?
I mean, and then they get the response from Tech. Oh, he turned it off. She's like, oh my God, why would he do that?
Yeah, right.
Why doesn't he love me anymore?
Yep. She said, I think he said he disabled his comm device.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's, wow. Talk about abandonment at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. Gosh, he left and then he doesn't want to talk to us at all. He just throw it away too. Gosh. Jerk.
So this is where we get the stampede, and the Ipsium capsule gets swept up and then explodes as they go into the cave, and it forces them into this other cave that they had found, another mining cave, and they're kind of pinned down in there at this point. There's the ever impending storm again that keeps going on. You can kind of hear it in the background. It's funny because they never really the storm never really hit them, I guess, until that very end right there with the Ipsium blowing up. But it's always ever present, which I thought was interesting. So I think if someone says, so now we're trapped, well, I think that was Tech, right? On top of everything else that's going on. I mean, read the room, dude. Like everybody's on edge. You got your kid over here crying in tears, and you're making comments about, the obvious, which is, oh, now we're trapped inside of a cave. Great kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and they got to dig out of this place, which is not an easy task. I mean, you see how big these boulders were, and even with Wrecker, like he said, I think it's going to take them days to fish out of this thing, and they don't have the rations, they don't have the food, they don't have the water. I mean, things are looking pretty dire at this point.
Yeah. And on top of that, again, to compound even more, and it's all building, right? There is an analogy between the Ipsium and how unstable it is, and kind of what's happening in the team dynamic, especially like with Omega. But on top of all that, now they're in here, and her first thing is, okay, well, I'll try to connect to the Marauder. And so she pulls out the device and she can't connect to it. And then Tech doubles down again and says, besides, it's most unlikely that the Marauder will be recovered. Right. So like, he's like, forget it. Just let it go. We're not ever going to get that thing back. Yeah.
I mean, you talk about melting down. I mean, it's probably about the closest we'll see Omega melt down, unless someone will actually die.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, she had enough. She couldn't believe. And granted, the way that D. Bradley Baker perform that line with Tech, it came out really harsh. Like when he responds to her, and
what is your issue? That one?
Yeah, what is your issue? Yeah, like just when she challenges him on it, and he responds that way. I'm like, oh snap! Like you don't know what you're doing, brother. I mean, you don't know what you're doing. Even Hunter's like, what are you saying, man? Yeah. Don't do that.
Well, and that was before, like you said, she went, and this is where she says, but he's not here. He's not with us. We're supposed to be a squad. This is where the passion's coming out, right? She's really emotional. She's very angry about everything. She can't, everything that's led up into this, all these setbacks have kind of finally just set off her fuse, as loud or as muted as that may be. But it was enough to get under Tech's skin, because he did fire back a very cold response of like, what is your issue? Like, how do you not, and it's not how you, I mean, don't get me wrong.
And he just didn't understand. But I mean, you and I know this because we have a lot of experience with this. You do not argue with an emotional child. I mean, it never goes well. You're not going to win. You're going to make things much, much worse.
Right.
Much worse, because you're not relating to them in the way, getting to their level and connecting with them and helping them understand that they're not alone. Right. And he's just so analytical, and we get a little flavor of maybe how he's really feeling, but that's the thing that's easiest for him to do. Just process the data, process the situation, come up with a solution, and carry out the solution, right? And just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And he has no patience and no, I don't know what he's missing in that moment. Maybe it's just he's never had to do it or force himself to do it, and no one's called him out to. So
No.
why would he even consider doing any of those things to support Omega in that kind of way, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of it, right? He probably looks at Omega more as a team member than a family member, and it's a very different approach, right? I mean, you can be at work and have colleagues or people that you study with or whatever else, and you may talk to them one way, and you talk to family differently. What I was going to say though is
think back to the first episode, right, when she's dangling off the wire, and Hunter's like, "Why is Omega hanging on the ship?" Well, we had to cut study short, but he has faith in her to do the things that need to be done as part of the team. To your point, and so yes, he does view her in that way, which she probably normally likes, right? And she probably appreciates that whenever it's appropriate, but in these moments, needing something different. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. Let's see. I'm trying to remember what I was saying now.
Mission accomplished.
Yep. Thank you very much. It was about Echo, and I don't remember. Okay, we'll move on. I'll come back to it though. I'm sure I'll remember in a little bit. So this is where Omega stomps off. She wants to be left alone. Oh my goodness, like shades of reality with the kid walking off and like not wanting to talk to you and all of that.
All it was missing was a slammed door.
A slammed door. Yeah, that's exactly it. So, and this is where he's like, I merely stated the truth. Like, yeah, you bonehead, right? You did. And that was what the problem. And that's what kind of where Hunter was. Like, this was big of Hunter to acknowledge that even with his limited, experience thus far as a parent, he knows that there is some right and wrong things that you do. Here's what I was going to say, and I can segue right into it now. I don't want to come down too hard on Tech because, as stable and as calming presence as I think I can be when situations get really intense, like I am prone to making a stupid remark, right? Or an emotionally charged remark. And for something like for Tech, it's almost expected, right? But, we've all done it. We've all said some things and crap, that's really not the way I should have said that, or I should never have said that, even though, like he said, it's the truth. Well, sometimes no one needs to hear the truth. And that's what Echo was saying. That was wrong. You actually said the truth. And we all know it's so obvious, painstakingly obvious, it doesn't need to be said.
Right. A lot like leaders, parents aren't made like it's a development thing. It's just over time you learn, you figure it out as you go, and you have these really tough learning moments like this one.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks that you got to go through it and you have to have egg on your face and you have to feel like a jerk, but those are the times you actually learn and you can do something better the next time.
What was really cool though is that's when that all happens, you can see it on the faces of all three of them. Even Wrecker, Wrecker's like dumbfounded. Like, right. I mean, he's probably the most in tune with his emotions, but it's almost like at that kid level. But all three of them seem staggered by what's just happened, right? They've had a family falling out in some regards. And whether or not they acknowledge that as such or what, you can see the impacts on their faces.
Well, and I think with her getting the emotions out, because the tension was there the entire episode from the moment they stepped off the ship at the beginning of the episode. But when they started talking, you feel and you hear it in each of their voices that they are all dealing with this in their own way. And each one of them is just not quite, they're just all handling it themselves. Mm-hmm. Rather than as a family, right? And so I think that's the thing is you hear all of that. And for Omega, that's just extremely frustrating because she kind of hears it too. And she's like, why can't they just give me what I need? Even though she really can't tell them what they need and what she needs. But you start to hear, though, that all of them are struggling with this. So Echo was an important part of this team, an important part of the family. And he is missed, just like Crosshair was.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not coming out in that way. And they're not going to do it. Again, this is kind of adult men are like this in general, though. We're not really forthcoming and outgoing with our emotions and, resolving these types of things very well either. So that a bunch of guys who were just bred to be fighters can't do it isn't necessarily surprising.
Well, and exactly. And I think that's the beauty of this episode was, I think, I hope that some of these characters have grown from this. Like they figure out a way to connect with that. I think that's happened with Tech in some ways. But I think that they are going to change. I mean, there may be some change that comes as a result of this, which is good.
I think they've done a good job in this series of showing that even if it's incremental, there is progress and there is movement for each of these guys as they learn to not only work with one another, but work with Omega in particular.
Yeah. So this is, at this point, this is all kind of about fixing the mistakes. And, Hunter and Tech are kind of talking about what's going on. He reminds him that, look, he's like, I made the mistake. I should have, with the Ipsium, but, Hunter's like, well, that's not the only mistake you made. You need to go fix it. I think it was Wrecker that said, go check the kid. Right. And he again states the obvious. This is part of, some of this can be defense mechanism for people, but he says, but she wanted to be alone. Like I'm honoring her wishes, even though he knows deep down in his heart, or we know as people that really the best thing is to go fix it. But, I'm going to use that as an excuse to not do it because I don't feel comfortable doing it, or I don't want to do it. So, of course he does, which is good. Heads over there to go kind of talk to her. And when he finds her, this is where she's kind of extracting Ipsium, and they kind of start the very light kind of casual discussion about, the trust here, right? About that whether or not she trusts him to extract the Ipsium. And his response is, most of his responses lack any kind of feeling whatsoever. Like he just said, I thought I wrote it down on here, but
he trusts her ability to do the job, basically.
Yeah, like, why couldn't you, like, this is where it's like, oh, or Tech, you're so frustrating. This is where it drives me nuts. It's like, she asks you a question. Why can't you just say, yeah, I trust you, Omega? That's it. That's all any normal human person needs to hear. And yet he gives this crap canned response that's so logically driven that, again, it's just disconnect again for Omega. Like
right.
And I get it. I mean, I get why he's there. I'm not trying to say anything about that, but that's the part that is frustrating.
Yeah, it's just too articulate for what needs to be said in the moment. But again, I think she also understands him to the point where she does soften a little bit too, right? I mean, she does, it is affirmation that she is valued and that he sees her and that he trusts her to be able to do the job. And so she's able to relax a little bit and eat, and some of that tension does dissipate. Mm-hmm. And so I think so while he may not have said it in the way that we would have loved for him to say it and maybe that she really needed, I think he was honest with her. And I think that's what she appreciates, is that she knows that he is being honest. He's not going to not tell her the truth. And for him to come out and say, I trust you to do your job. And again, it's something that at least it helped to bridge the gap a little bit and at least open the door, just, even if it was a crack, it at least opened it back up so they could start to talk.
Yeah. And
so I'm giving him a little bit of a break there.
No, I feel I get it. Like I don't want to be too hard on him because he does come around. Like he does grow.
He's kind of trying. Yeah.
Yeah. He's trying. There's but so in this small piece here, it does feel like she grows, like it almost like she aged 3 years in this little moment, because the way she talks to Tech at the very end of this, when she says basically, go grab my satchel, monkey, you know what I mean? Like the way it was very grown up ish. Like, I mean, it was still laced with a little bit of bitterness because of what had just happened, but she's like, let's stick to the mission, go get my stuff. Like, she doesn't even make eye contact with them. It's not like a sweet, can you please go get my bag or anything? It's like, go get my stuff. It's just, I don't know. It was a different side of Omega that we had not seen, a very more mature side of her, grown up side, at least the way she approached the dialogue and all that. And,
I viewed it a little bit different. I viewed it more as her almost disconnecting a little bit too, and acting like the one that she's around, and reducing some of that emotional heaviness that goes with it, with a bit of sass in there. But yeah, and so I think I viewed it more in that respect. Like a preteen would do.
Right. Yeah.
Like, fine.
Attitude. Sassy.
You want to work? We'll get to work. Go get my stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I viewed it.
What did you think about, she's trying to get the Ipsium and she's about to extract it, trying to get that one last vial, and we can't, some time passes and they've got one more vial that's left. And so they're just kind of sticking to the job. So, to kind of keep their minds up. I doubt they really had any other conversations up until this point. But anyway, so she's about to fall in, and she falls into it. It was interesting that, like, it was shocking, one, that she fell. Like, holy crap. Like, I wasn't thinking about water underneath her.
And he just jumped right after her, right?
Unconsciously.
Didn't even think about it. Yep.
So I don't know. I mean, there's a part of me that thinks that, wait, was that the right thing? Would I have done that? I don't know that I would have done that. Like,
because he has no idea what's down there, right?
Exactly.
I mean, she just jumped and you just hear her voice trail off. Now, granted, he may have take a calculated risk of saying, well, the likelihood that there's something down there to catch you. But then again, you and I probably think similarly in this one. No, she's my kid. She's my part of my family. I'm going after her because that's what I need to do. I need to go rescue her. I need to go check that she's okay. And the first inclination isn't for his own safety. It's to go after her and do something and try. And so I thought that was really, I caught that too. And I thought it was really great. And it was very understated too, how they did it, how they approached it. Mm. It was just like, boom, it was done. And they never talked about it really either. Like, hey, you came after me. You know, of course he did.
Maybe it comes up in the next episode. Because I got to wonder, like, I would ask, like, what the heck happened? Like, I fell in there. How did you fall in there? Right? Oh, so Dale's stealing my thunder. This is what I was going to say. I was going to say, Jonesy, you give me too much credit. You're telling me that I would have done that as a parent. I would have done that as the Anakin Skywalker and said his fate will be the same as ours. So, but that was the joke, and now it's been deflated. So thanks, dude.
That's why we're all here for you.
That's why we're all here. Okay, so they fall into this aqueduct and kind of get swept away 35, 40 clicks. No, I'm kidding. Down the road. In there. And then Hunter's like paternal instinct kicks in, right? He knows something's wrong. Not sure what it is. I'm saying he's force sensitive. Maybe it was Omega. Okay, here you go.
Oh, he's a tracker, man. No, he senses something happen.
No, listen though. So Omega
pulls
a Leia or pulls a Han or pulls a Luke and connects to him through the force. And that's how he knew that there was something. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so yes, he's a tracker. He's a hunter.
Yes.
Sixth sense kicked in, whatever it is. That's fine. So they go after Omega and Tech, and this is right when they get kind of washed on shore. And of course, they relive back and they get the whole explanation as to what's happened. Okay, this finally forwards into. Wait, before we do that, I love that Wrecker just goes, "Rawr, I hate this planet." I don't know what I laughed every time I saw this episode. I don't know what it was about it, but I thought it was great. Well, wasn't there somebody else in Star Wars who said something similar about hating this planet?
Omega said it too this episode.
Did she really? I didn't catch that if that was the case. Okay.
Something to that effect, at least. Yeah, she talked about, we're never going to get off this planet, or I hate this planet, or whatever it was.
All right. Well, let's talk about the Omega and Tech scene, because this is really where the meat of this whole conversation, or the whole, at least for me, again, the whole episode.
And it was a really brief scene, too.
There wasn't a lot here. You're right. It was brief, but I think it was pretty heavy weighted for what we've got. And I want to, all relative, right, to what we've had historically with the show. You know, this isn't Andor, where we're getting like week after week of deep monologues and all that stuff. But I mean, for what this show does, this was a little bit different than I think we've had. And I think this is where, what was her name? Miss Brooke Roberts, I think, came into play here.
Right.
But what did you think about the scene? Like, what were some of the big, I guess, touching moments for you?
Well, again, I love that there was no music. It was just the two of them. Mm-hmm. And they just kind of come right out and start talking. You know, how can you feel this way? How can you think about this? I thought we were a squad. I thought we were a family. And that's the moment that Tech, it just triggers. And I like that she just lets him just be there in that moment for a minute and just process it, you know, and that he actually took a moment to just to be a little vulnerable. And granted, that's probably about as vulnerable as Tech gets, right? Of saying, you know, I might process things differently than y'all do, but I do have feelings. It does affect me in some way. And again, he didn't necessarily have to come out and say anything deep or break down in tears or anything, but just acknowledging it, that he does feel Echo's loss, and it does mean something to him, even if he is not super expressive about it, and does believe that they need to just move on because that's what they need to do. It helped Omega at least say, I'm not alone, right? And if the least compassionate and the least emotional member of this family can acknowledge that and say that they're dealing with this, then it just makes me feel better, right? Mm-hmm. Just a little bit better. And I think that was just really important for him to have that. But again, it was her leading the question, asking the question, she just kind of dumped it out there. I'm not giving her any more a lot of credit in that regard. She just kind of, outburst. But I like that he actually sat there and took the question and thought about it and hadn't really and affirmed for her that they are a family. When he's probably never truly said that before. And so it was kind of a big moment for him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she poses the question, we're more than that. We're family, aren't we? He says, yes, of course we are. And then she really kind of puts it on him and says, then why do you act like that? And there's this cool moment there where he just pauses and they hold on there for, 5-6 seconds long where it's just silent. And he's kind of looking around, just looking left and right, thinking about things. And I thought he's processing like 8 million different responses and trying to pick the best one for it. And I think he does. Like he says, Echo chose a different path, as did Crosshair. I have to respect their decision. Even though it can be difficult to understand, we must carry on. I may process moments and thoughts differently, but it does not mean that I feel any less than you. Now, this is a very, again, I hate to use Spock because it's Star Trek, but this is a very Vulcan response, right? Somebody who acknowledges that there may be emotions and feelings there, but it's just they're not in a position to kind of respond like everybody else.
Well, and they don't control them, right?
Right. They don't control them. They're not, exactly.
I love it when he mentions Crosshair, though, that they linger on Omega's response.
Mm-hmm.
Like, holy smokes, he thinks about Crosshair. Like, we haven't talked about Crosshair in forever.
Right. Yeah.
But that it lingers and that he still thinks that it's a consideration for him and it's that close to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just offers that little bit more for him.
So this is what I really enjoyed about the scene is for all the things you said. Like, there's no music, the lighting is very low, right? It's very focused. The shots are very tight on the characters. They've done a good job artistically to kind of give us just them two, focused on those two without anything else going on. On top of that, you have essentially a parent and their child, father, daughter, having this conversation. And for kids, like we've not really talked about this so much and specifically, but change is always hard for children, right? And to bring it back to real world, if you're moving schools or, kids that go through divorce or even just dealing with things like, puberty or, life changes that come around, right? Yeah, there you go. The lighting here is freaking awesome. We just pulled up the image of them kind of sitting down talking together. But change is very difficult for children, right? They like stability. They like routines. And anytime that happens, it can make a child feel uncomfortable. And of course, I don't expect any of the clones to understand that. And it's nothing that I like, I knew this when I was 13. Like, this is stuff that you learn about and get better at and understand more as you get older. But this was that moment, right? This is exactly what was happening here. They were trying to kind of come to a mutual understanding of who they were and how they were dealing with it. And for Omega, it was like you said, it's as simple as, yes, okay, at least you're acknowledging that it is impacting you.
Right.
I may not feel the same, and it looks very different than how I feel, but at least you're acknowledging it, and it gives me enough to kind of move forward, right? And we see that at the very end, because then she comes full circle and uses his own line about, we'll change or adapt, or I don't know, I've got it written down here in just a second, but that was a really, again, big moment for her. But I just love the fact that it was just those two, dad, daughter, having this conversation, trying to hash things out, and him making himself vulnerable. Now, the other thing that we didn't mention, but they had just kind of survived death. I don't know, maybe they didn't think in that term, but I mean, they both took this leap of faith and fell from a cliff, fell into a river for God knows how long. And so I think for that might have been enough for Tech to really kind of feel, that may have been the icebreaker for Tech to kind of be more open to sharing his emotions, since, I mean, he was coughing not just as much as she was. So, that probably was the primer for them to get here. And then the fact that, okay, well, there's nobody else around, we got nothing else to do. Let's just hash this out. And he takes puts his best foot forward to kind of take a stab at it. And I think he does a good job. At least he does enough to connect with Omega for the first time, maybe ever. And I mean that sincerely. Like, I don't know that Omega really understood Tech. Like, he's always been kind of this weird character, and that's just who he is. But she's never had the kind of connectedness that she's had with Hunter, with I was going to say Crosshair, but Crosshair is totally different. But she's never connected with him the way she may have done with Wrecker and Hunter, or even Echo, who I think she was probably most connected with by the time we got to that last episode.
Yeah, I mean, he's not an easy character to. I mean, he's been like the teacher too at times, right? So he's the one leading the lessons. I think they all probably lead their own version of a lesson, depending on what they excel at. But it's always been in more of an instructor in, I don't know, an emotionally distant relationship. They get along, they're fine. There's nothing wrong with their relationship, but there's never really anything deeper. than that. And she hasn't had to have the moments like she has with Hunter, where Hunter's been the clear father figure, throughout the episodes and throughout the season and a half here.
Yeah. I want to go to, I had this in the show notes, but I am not, and I should have reached out to Jeff. Like, I'm not an expert on this by any means, but I'd consider this as well. I don't know if anybody's asked this question yet about it, but he says seeing a lot of autism discourse as well, which is interesting. As someone who has worked in the field most of my professional life, it was good to see people feel represented. And I think there may be a part of that. Like, at the beginning, I said, I hate folks that are kind of like this. And I don't mean people that have autism. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that are just like too macho to share their feelings, too macho to connect with people, too macho to express how they're doing, or at least even just try. Like, oh, I don't know how it. That's the stuff that bothers me. But autism, a totally different thing. And yes, there are signs of that, like from him. Was like Sheldon from the comedy series, right? He's the extreme example of something like that, where it's so black and white, and they're struggling with it all. So I think there could be something here as well that this is playing into it with him. But I'm glad he brought it up and I didn't, because I would have completely botched the message there. So thank you, Jeff. Okay. All right. So wonderful scene. Really enjoyed it. Really good moment. And again, all things considered, this is a pretty big moment for this series because we don't get a lot of time with the characters in this fashion. So back to the story. Landho, finally, we get Wrecker and Hunter who wash up on shore, and they've managed to bring the bag. There was a moment in there when they were talking about how, I think it was Tech that was telling them what they needed to do, and mentioning that, oh, and by the way, as you're being traversed through the rapids, just don't blow up because, you got all that Ipsium with you.
Right. What's funny is during this moment, like this really heavy scene and all of that. And then when I'm watching it the very first time, the thought that popped in my head was, they're actually going to successfully accomplish a mission for once. Just out of nowhere, I'm like, they actually might follow through with this one.
Well, it might, yeah. It might
still another episode, so maybe not. But, where they failed, because early on I was like, man, they just failed another one. And then she found it. I mean, she hit the mother lode, by the way.
Right.
And that's load with an LODE, if you know what I mean.
So, yeah, good job.
All that Warcraft paying off. But yeah, so I mean, but it was like, finally, they might actually be successful. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something if Sid was responsible for them going, thinking she was going to get rid of him, to go back to your thought, and then they came back and actually,
like hit, all this Ipsium,
hit the jackpot,
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to my theory, and we're almost to the point where I'm going to come back to my theory here in a little bit. So they blow up there's some symbolism too. I forgot to mention, like when she turns off her lamp, like earlier on when she walks away to go be alone. It's interesting that she turns off her lamp because she wants to be in the dark, which I thought was kind of like, well, that's a little bit morbid, or maybe not morbid, but sordid, right? And so she turns the lamp off, and then there's a light. Right. And so she goes to the light, and then that kind of leads her to her next phase. Here's the same thing, right? They get into this one cave, and then there's a little light that's coming through, right? So it's almost like this guiding light that's kind of leading her through this episode, leading her through this development of her character as well. But
light for her relationship with Tech too.
Okay, yeah, exactly, right. There's symbolism there as well. Checking
all the boxes.
Yeah, but they decide to blow it up, and
we'll blow the light up. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was cool too, because I think we got this season, we got the reminder that Wrecker doesn't like heights, but then we also got the reminder that he's obsessed with blowing stuff up. You remember? And we haven't had that yet. So he was fighting over whether he was mad because Tech was going to get to blow it up, and he would, and the Tech gives him some technical reason why it can't be him.
Right, which I laughed about, because so Tech's response was, it has to be a very precise shot, otherwise, we'll basically create what we had before, where we'll have a cave in. Omega just kind of tossed it on the rock, though, so it wasn't exactly a super
placed. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But again, maybe where he hit it on the vial mattered. I don't know, but it seemed like a pretty weak response. Just another thing to poke poor Wrecker.
Yep. He doesn't get to blow stuff up.
He just wants to have a little fun.
It's going to be fun. Yeah. What a far cry from that.
Yeah. Things aren't too fun right now.
Yeah. Where she's at. Big swing there. Okay. So they get out there. There's a spaceport in sight. Omega leads the way. I don't know if that was intentional or what, but she does take the first step forward, and they kind of fall in behind her as they head out to the spaceport. They get there, and it turns out that it's abandoned, and it's been abandoned for for some time, very, very long time, according to, I think, what Tech was doing.
Again, very reminiscent of the old, the gold boom and bust. I mean, very, very, I think that was probably the inspiration for a lot of this, the gold rush. And when it dried up, towns just completely went barren. They were left as is.
Yeah. They do find this long range array kind of thing that's still there. And so this is how they communicate with Sid. And so they call in the favor to Sid of, hey, we need your help. We lost our ship, and et cetera, et cetera.
And what a jerk response, man.
Well, yeah. And see, this is, so back to the theory. I don't think she was expecting them to call, right?
Especially not for a ride.
I think it's what's that?
Especially not for a ride.
Exactly. Not for, well, I mean, if she was, yeah, exactly. Not for a ride. But I think the theory is that she went in, like she arranged for that ship to be stolen and knew where they were going to be and sent somebody out there to steal it. Again, I don't know what the motive is, but the fact that they're calling her had to have been shocking. And I think that put her on her heels, and why she was quick to say, sorry, I can't help you. Like, no, can't do it. Because it does seem kind of cold. Now, at the same time, if you watch her body language, she's looking at everybody, and it's only after she focuses on Omega, because Omega says, what was her? She says something like, you have to help us, or something to that effect.
Yeah, I saw her glance down just briefly. They didn't really linger too much on it.
Yeah, I don't think I wrote that what she said down, but she does say, look, she's like, what do you mean? Like, Omega's got it on her face too. Like, how can you do this? How can you say no? And like she's avoiding eye contact with her. And then she finally does look down at Omega. And it's at that moment that she's like, crap, I can't. Even after Tech had already told her, look, we saved your butt from, Roland Durand and Malegi and all that. But I think it really was that relationship that she had with Omega that is paying dividends now, and got her better conscience at this point to be like, okay, I'll do something. We don't know what that's going to be, but I do feel like she is going to follow through on that.
Well, and then she said, give me a few days. And they were like, no. And she just click.
Yeah.
You get what you get and you don't throw a fit.
Right. Like, what is Sid doing that she's doing nothing. She's wiping down counters.
That's the question about as we get into the next episode. Do we go and visit like where Sid is at to understand we get that side of things? And so while the Bad Batch is just kind of surviving or I don't know, doing whatever it is they're doing, do we go and spend time with Sid to see what she's up to in order to actually do the extraction then once she's available to do so?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you think, no, we just kind of stick with the Bad Batch?
I think we'll probably stick with the Bad Batch just because it feels like it is more focused on them. I mean, the episode, they could go a different route, but
we've been asking for a long time, and I know Jeff doesn't like Sid in the chat. Got that. But we've been talking about for a long time that we need something more from Sid, and we need to understand her a little bit better. We need to understand a little bit more about her past. Like some of those things are pretty interesting to us, but also how she feels about this team and what is she doing outside of all of this, and what is her motive? Like, what's her direction? What's her steer? What's her end game? Yeah. And I think this might be that opportunity, if they wanted to take it, where we could get some of those questions answered, as well within the context of how does she view this team? How does she view them as a collective family? Maybe more in Omega's terms that Sid's part of the family, but, is Sid kind of feeling that tug as well? And I think this is a great opportunity to be able to go back and revisit that. And then for her to come in and repay some of her debts and see just how she feels about this team. Yeah.
I hadn't considered that, but I wouldn't be opposed to that. If they start the episode with Sid and that becomes the primary focus, and we eventually get to her coming back and rescuing them, right?
Right.
I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. Because you're right. I think we need something from her. Like, they introduced her last season. We didn't get a whole lot. Expected to get more this season, and they've already kind of planted those seeds of she's more than who we think she is, right or wrong. So
yeah, it's a great point. I mean, it's time to figure out. I mean, we're on the back half of the season,
right?
And so we're running out of opportunities for some of that to come out. And this is a really good chance because they're in a jam. They need the help. They won't last super long. They're very resourceful. They'll figure something out for the most part. But at some point, kind of like Rogue One, you just kind of run out of chances. You run out of opportunity. Mm-hmm. No matter how good you are, if you're on a barren planet, you are still on a barren planet. So it would be really great. And plus, maybe it'll turn Jeff's cold, scaly heart a little bit warmer towards Sid.
Yeah, man.
God, give her a break, Jeff. Dude. She's just trying to make her way in the galaxy.
Set up. That's so dumb. Okay, so from there we get to actually that was actually funny. So we get to Omega. So she, like you said, she cuts the transmission. Sid cuts the transmission off when they say, "Look, we don't have enough rations," and so they're left thinking, like, "How are we supposed to figure this out? Like, how are we going to get food?" And it's Omega of all the people. It's Omega now who steps up and reiterates the same lines that Tech said earlier, which is, "We'll figure it out like we always do." Right. And at that point, they kind of look at each other, and there's a nod from Tech. He kind of nods in approval, and then she kind of nods, and there's a smile there. So you get that they've connected and they understand each other. Maybe not 100%, but they're in a much better position than they were, going into this episode.
And Omega's on that kind of path to recovery and acceptance a little bit too, right? You talked about the stages of grief.
Mm-hmm.
So she's moved on and she's progressing through them. But of course, we close out with the storm roiling in the background, of course, as we cut to black.
Looming in the background. Yeah, it does kind of fade to black very slowly. And then again, that thunder rolls for like about a second or two, even after they're in black. So kind of ominous that they did that before they run the main title or main theme for the Bad Batch.
Yeah. And then the Bendu showed up again.
And then the Bendu showed up. So that's and that's where it ends. So all, I think it was good. I got a couple questions here. Looking ahead, the next episode's called The Retrieval. I don't know why anybody would think we're not going to wrap this episode. It's not a two-parter, but I've seen some people go questioning, is there going to be a two-parter? Oh yeah, dude, they're not going to end there.
They've got to resolve the problem.
I mean,
they don't just show up back at Sid's parlor. Wow, we really got out of a hairy one.
This isn't season 3 where Mandalorian shows up, where the Mando shows up with Baby Yoda. I mean, that's right. They wouldn't do that.
Yeah, Luke Skywalker's going to come in on an X-wing and just save the day.
So the question that I had out there again was, what is the crossing? And so I still don't know. Like now that we've dissected this to the nth degree, like I still have a hard time really pinpointing what it could be. And maybe that's intentional. Maybe once we've seen the next episode, we know what the crossing is relevant to what the retrieval is. But thoughts on what the retrieval is? Is it the Marauder?
I think it's the retrieval of the Bad Batch at this
Picking
point.
them up?
Yeah, but
getting them out. Also, okay, that would be a Sid thing. Then I think that's one point for a Sid story, or getting to see behind the scenes and what she's doing.
I would really like to see that. I mean, I don't know if they have the gusto to go that route and give her kind of her own episode of sorts, but I think you could give her half to 2/3 of the episode still, and still have something really good and give us more about that character. I think the crossing is still very much. I think again it was partially Omega, coming to terms, moving through the stages of grief, but also pulling Tech a little bit further towards her too, and meeting in the middle. So I think it was more about just finding this common ground, and maybe all of them, maybe embracing more the idea of family, maybe Tech recognizing this idea of family and embracing it. Because I don't think he's ever used this term, and the squad as a general, I mean, throughout, I don't think anybody's ever used family. Even though it just emanates off of Omega, right?
Well, and it's ironically they call each other brothers, right? And that right in first family, but
they don't really. Yeah, I guess these guys don't really call each other brothers, do they?
Nothing like you don't hear them say that a lot. They just call each other by their names. Yeah, even when they're talking to like Rex and those guys, they don't use that as freely as the clones do, right?
And I think that's a product of their environment. I mean, they've been different, they've been special.
Yeah,
they don't associate with the regs at all, right?
Yeah.
So they're all so unique that they probably don't feel like they're all that, linked or related in any kind of way, except that they share a core genetic, source material. But yeah, I think, so I think the crossing maybe more in that regard. And I think, the retrieval of the Bad Batch, maybe there's retrieving something else too. Maybe it's the Marauder. Maybe it doesn't seem like we'd go back to, towards like towards an Echo or something like that. But it could also be a little deeper. Maybe it's the retrieval of Sid's soul of sorts, of her. I mean, again, it could be multiple things. And maybe that's a part of it too, is her kind of going back to maybe not how she was, because it sounds like she was a bit of a swindler and a, kind of what's Han Solo?
Pirate, scoundrel?
Scoundrel. There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
Scoundrel. So maybe more of her, a bit of a redemption, in the eyes of the team, maybe what Omega has seen in her all along. is finally able to come about. So I'm probably pushing that a little too hard, but I would like to have that opportunity for Sid to come out and give us a reason to care about her finally.
Yeah.
She seems like there's something there. Let's explore that and let's see what what's actually there. Let's find out who she really is.
What about and I echo all that, no pun intended. What about the town? Do you think we're going to find out more about the town? Do you think that's relevant even from a story perspective? Like,
no, not relevant to the story. B, it was abandoned because it was an old mining town.
Yeah, I was trying to think if maybe I don't know where they're going to get food from. Maybe they go hunt the stampede things, right, and use those for food.
I was actually shocked there wasn't a worm or something in the mines and everything because they had the holes kind of cut out. They were probably just drilling holes or just digging. But
no, like naturally born holes by sandworms.
Exactly. I thought for sure we were going to have a monster of the week come about in this whole thing.
True.
So I was actually quite happy that we didn't.
Maybe this next episode they kill it and they eat it.
Maybe so. Yeah, why is it like on desert planets you have these gigantic worms? Like, what the hell are they eating?
It's what I've been saying that forever.
Doesn't make any
forever
sense.
Since like 1987. I've been wondering how that space slug. No, let me go back. So 1980, how the space slug got as big as it did.
Right, on an asteroid.
On an asteroid,
trying to eat ships. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they did explain like it like moves around. It just hadn't made that its home, kind of like a snail in a shell.
Oh, okay.
That's how legends fixed it, but still. That's really big. Do you know how many Millennium Falcons it needs to consume on a day just to maintain its weight? It's quite a bit. So the other question I have is around the thief, the mysterious thief. Like let's say they don't get the Marauder back, which I think would be shocking and tragic, and I just don't think they would go there because it's too iconic, more so than the Razor Crest, arguably, because it's been around for a while now. And
the emotional attachment to it with Wrecker making Omega a little room for herself and giving her the stuffed animal, and that's been her refuge. Very different than the Razor Crest, yeah. Sure.
So, but if they're going after the ship, then I would, and this is where the question was. The question was whether or not we would see Hondo Jr. pop up again. And I think if they're going to go after the Marauder, then that's a yes. And I think we are going to learn the identity of who that person is and the motive. Which I don't like right now. That is the big mystery to me. Like, why would somebody outside of just a plain old marauder pirate, or was it a poacher? Mm-hmm. Which just doesn't seem like, I don't know.
If Hondo shows up, I'm going to lose my mind. You know this, right?
Yes.
It's going to be bad.
It's going to be bad. It'll be really bad.
Be really bad because I'm going to bring Maz into it. It's going to be a whole thing.
Good Lord.
I know what we're going to do for the next 6 Patreon episodes.
Well, good luck. One-man shows are tough, but I'm sure you can do it.
That's why we got Lauren. She'll do it with me.
That's right. We're bringing our contingency. She's
bringing the big guns.
Yeah. She'll do a better job covering Maz than I will. I can tell you that. All right. Well, I think I guess we'll leave it there. I mean, this is for an episode.
Dale did pull out there were antelope there, so presumably they could go hunt.
That's why I said the stampede. They go kill whatever those things were in the stampede.
Yeah. I missed that. Sorry. Yeah.
No, you're fine. I don't want Dale taking all the credit. He's already taken credit for 2 things. Stop stealing my show notes, bro. But yeah, I mean, they've already kind of shown it to us, so why wouldn't they, But so again, good episode. I did enjoy it. It did feel kind of different coming off the last 2 episodes, given that was really heavy mythology driven. But I did love this a lot because it gave us those moments that I've been wanting from the Clone Wars specifically more the Bad Batch themselves, because we don't.
This was very reminiscent of the time we talk about this a lot. We bring it up a lot when Yoda was talking with the clones, right? In one of those really early episodes. This was very reminiscent of that, where a quiet moment using the opportunity to connect and break down walls, right? Very different. I mean, very different scenario, of course, but just that this is why the Bad Batch can be so good, like with that connection to Clone Wars, and that it's just so connected in that way. Mm-hmm. I really like that we captured that spirit here yet again.
So that's Yoda was talking to the clones, making them feel better. Yoda was Force sensitive. Omega is talking to the clones.
No, she's a clone talking to the clones. So now it's very
Omega is
now it's so meta.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
No, it's just meta.
Okay, we'll figure out a way to segue into thanking our Patreon or people that showed up tonight on that.
Yeah, you know what's really meta, Albert? How amazing all these people are that come out and see us.
It's funny. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, please. Continue on.
Well, I mean, that's kind of my thing. And no, hey, thank you everyone who came out for the live stream tonight. We had a great showing. I appreciate all of the chat. Dale, thank you for stealing Albert's thunder more than once. Jeff, thank you for all of the intelligence you bring to the show that we are unable to do consistently. So, but no, thank you to everyone who came out tonight. Jonathan, Lauren, Nase, Steph, Jeff, Dale, Larry, Mike B, Sky, Jorge, and Hard Countered. If I missed anyone, my sincerest apologies. That's not intentional. If you are curious about coming out to the live stream, cantinacast.com/YouTube. We'll point you over to the YouTube channel and you can subscribe. You can get the little bell, notify whenever we're going to go live. And again, if you'd like to hear us talk about the different clones that we have for, about what we saw in the Clone Conspiracy and some Legends material, cantinacast.com/Patreon. That is out there right now, both the video and the audio only. So if you have a preference there, it's at the After Dark tier. So we invite you to take a look at that. Tell us what you think. Leave us your comments. Leave us your feedback. We love to hear it. We love hearing from everyone and certainly appreciate it. You're on mute.
Dang it. I'm going to have to edit that out.
I'm sure it was an epic, 3 or 4 words.
At least it was one word that was about 3 or 4 seconds. I said, and on top of all that, hold on, let me take it from the top. Take it 3, 2, 1. And on top of all that, we have this Sunday, we've got a Patreon show. It'll be Lauren and I. We're hashing out the details right now, but don't worry. We have something coming. So we'll get that out. We've also got working and negotiating a time to do our top 3 moments from season 2 of The Mandalorian. We want to get that ahead of March 1st because that's when Mandalorian starts. And then looking at the schedule, my Lord, we got all kinds of Star Wars stuff. I don't know. We're going to be doing 2-3 shows a week at some point here, just because it's probably going to have to happen. On top of that, you've got Jedi Novel Archives, so Lauren's YouTube stuff that she's doing there over the books. I don't want to steal her thunder, but I'm so excited about what she was talking about today. Okay, I'm not going to say it, but she's going to cover something that I'm like giddy. Ooh, I can't wait to see what she does. And she's never read it, and so I'm so excited. You guys are in for a treat when she does cover that. But yeah, lots and lots of stuff still coming down the pipe here.
Yeah, Mando around the corner, so we're going to have a final hype show. We always bring that to y'all before as well. Yep. So yeah, a lot to cram in here in less than 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks until Mando, and then we're going to have Bad Batch and Mando at the same time. There's some Vision stuff going on at the same time as well. We're not going to be able to cover all of it, but
Celebration.
We got Celebration, yeah. But Lauren's covering the books. She's going to step in and help us out, I'm sure, as well. So be on the look. We're going to try to pump as much as that out as we can on time, and then we'll come back to the things that maybe we weren't able to quite get to, or that we had to bump for precedence on the others, because there's only 3 of us, so we do what we can.
Yep. All right. Well, with that, we will see you guys here in just a few days for our Patreon show.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.